Welcome. This is the Union Tapes episode number 45. We have a new magazine coming out, zine, magazine, whatever you want to call it. I kind of call it both. Whatever it is, it's a print matter with pages. I wanted to go into magazine history, UK BMX magazine history, for this episode, because I love magazines and I think a few other people out there like magazines as well. I just wanted to give you a brief history of my route into this. So the first zine I made was in 1986 or 87. I can't remember which. Probably 87, I think. And it was because BMX Action Bike were pushing. BMX Action Bike was the big magazine back in the 80s for BMX. They were pushing zines and DIY stuff, and BMX had just rolled round to having like a little bit of culture to it, and it was borrowing from the skateboard scene at the time, which was just coming into another boom. And the people in BMX Action Bike were doing a lot of photocopy, cut and paste stuff, and it was really creative, and they was sort of pushing forward this thing of like making BMX zines. So many of the people who still rode BMX at that point, which at that point it was in its decline, different scenes started making zines. They would just photocopy, they'd take the photos, you know what a zine is, they write it themselves, photocopy the pages, staple it together, and that was that. It was a zine. So that was quite popular at the time. And I wanted to touch upon the first one I made, which I'm not going to show you any pictures of it because it's really un-PC now, as you would expect for someone who's 14 years old. Angst-ridden, 2 14 and 1 15-year-old. My friend Johnny Roast, he was the guy who took the photos and helped me put it together. I did a lot of the drawing and the layout. And I've got my mum to photocopy it at work, I think. And we had a zine. Lasted one issue. And then we got bored of it. I think Johnny Roast quit really riding BMX back then for a little while. And then he got back into it. So I wanted to touch upon that, and then the resurgence of zines semi-recent. I know T1 made a zine in the 90s. I can remember people making zines, and I always thought, that's weird, they're making zines. I didn't think people would do that again. And a few brands and people through the ages have made zines and kept it alive, and right now I'm really, really into that sort of stuff. I wanted to touch upon the reasons why I started making a zine and how it turned into a magazine. And in 2020, I started getting into the Central Library stuff because they do a lot of zines, and I was into Red Steps. And I remember the first issue of Red Steps I bought or saw, and I was really blown away by it. It was like a thick A5, loads of information, really light-hearted, humorous. Just a lot. It really appealed to me and many of the other people that I showed it to. I thought, why am I not doing this? This makes perfect sense to me. I like all this stuff, and I like the creativity and the opinions and the basically pushing something physical out. So that's how I started making Union zines, was seeing all those guys doing all that stuff, and it had so much appeal to me, and so much it was very magnetizing, and I wanted to do some, and I wanted to put some opinions out. As you know, I like putting an opinion out. So I made the first Union zine, which was I think it came out in 2021 or 2020, can't remember exactly, and that was a really fun process, and I really enjoyed it, and a lot of other people seem to enjoy it as well. So from there, we thought, well, we'll just carry on. We'll keep doing this and see where it goes. And the first ones were A4, probably 60 pages. The content was quite humorous and had a few insults in it, but they were all quite light and not really. I mean, as they are now, they're not really that heartfelt. They're just more of a joke, and there's some truth to some of them, but not. It's not to be taken too seriously. So we ended up going from the A5 zine, which was just black and white and very much looking like an authentic zine, to a full colour magazine, which is A4 and 100 plus pages. This is one of the issues I've got of the last authentic type of zine that I made, which is issue 4. And then for issue 5, I wanted to do something a little bit. I wanted to push the boat out a bit, but this is basically your generic zine with some opinions, pictures, stories, general. This is in this one. I've kind of learned how to do it a little bit better with, and got a bit more creative with layers and stuff like that. And I really like these interviews, people talking about certain stuff. But yeah, stuff like that, and that was cool and enjoyable. And it wasn't that hard to do those. That one's about 72 pages or something. And then we went from there, we went to a full magazine, which came with the Don't Break the Oath and Nails in the Coffin DVD. That's in cellophane, obviously. Can't really give you much of a flick through that, but that's a full magazine, A4. That's issue 5. Issue 6 is this one, dedicated to Fids, RIP. And this one had a lot more to it. Not more than issue 5. It was very much along the same lines, but it was opinions, interviews, random BMX, random stories, all fun stuff, current stuff, old stuff, in the middle stuff. I'll put some more pages up to display on screen, but yeah, all just very zine style, which is what I like. I like the cut and paste sort of punk rock look of a lot of this stuff, so I kind of kept it for the mag. So issue 7, as I say, will be out in February. Keep your eyes out for it. It's going to be another good one, and there's plenty to read and get offended with in there. There's also a little bonus coming with that, but I won't tell you about that until we release the info. So I also wanted to tell you where magazines, or find out where magazines came from, when they came out, what year they came out, what we had before magazines, if we was into BMX, where did the info come from, and where it went from there. So all the way through the boom, the decline, and back again. So I wanted to get that information down on video. So this is what we're about to delve into. So 1981, one of the first mags that came out for BMX was BMX News, which was actually on the back. There's a pretty good, look at that. Someone's laying it down big time. But these were like newspapers, big newspapers of BMX events, a little comic strip, pictures of people racing, adverts, all your usual magazine type stuff. These came out, from what I can tell, every week, which is astonishing when you think about putting it. I mean, they're not many pages, but to put something like this together, in 1 week is unreal. They're probably they're probably like 20 pages or something. But I'll put up pictures down the bottom so you can see. But yeah, look, it's a big old school like newspaper. And that is BMX News. And bear in mind, before these things came out, and this one only lasted 15 issues, that's 4 months. So I think it came out every week and didn't last long at all. Check the logo, because you'll be seeing something very similar later on. And yeah, before these mags were about, we had no way of seeing any BMX pictures. There was nothing. Like, this is before my time. I didn't even ride at this point in time. And one of the others in 1981 was BMX Weekly. Look at that ROM on the cover. Someone Xing it up out the half pipe. And like I say, most of these were just racing. And this was obviously another one that came out every week, which I don't even know how you could do that now with all the digital stuff, let alone then. This is the same sort of thickness. Usual sort of stuff. Racing, hardly any freestyle. A couple of jumps if you're lucky. Mostly black and white, whereas BMX News had colour. But yeah, that's one of the others. BMX Weekly. Which went on to be BMX Bi-Weekly a couple of years later. And then this one is really the cream of the ones that came out in 81. And this is BMX Official. And there you go, number 1. That's probably the more well-known cover that you've seen, if you have seen any of these online. Andy Ruffle and Nicky Matthews, I think that is. Inside, there's not a great deal. This is probably the best page, isn't it? There's not a great deal to look at. Pretty thin. I think it says 32 pages, I think. Can't see it very well. And this is the sort of bikes that you was getting punted out in the early days. Look at that. Sorry, this one. What are you doing with that? Look at those bars and the bottom bracket height. It's just surprising that we got anywhere. And we didn't really, I suppose. Some people did. Ruffle did, look, there's a ruffle on the back there. Might be someone else. But yeah, this is what you had. Advert for not even Alpine Action at that point, Alpine Sports, which was the ski and skateboard shop that sold BMX stuff in the early days, one of the real good ones. And the covers, there's another one. There you go, Tim March, look. Tim March launching it. I think he's in here in one of the spreads. There he is at Slade's Farm, giving it some. That was the cover of that one. And let me just show you this. This is the more appealing of the batch of the ones I have. Look at that. That's it. That's fully happening right there for me. I would have been 9 or something at this point. And all these people here watching this guy getting rad. A nice sunny day with his helmet and goggles and all the bits on there. That would have really appealed to kids of the 80s. Coloured tyres as well. We'd never seen coloured tyres, most of us, or coloured rims. Bikes were like black and silver with a coloured frame, and that was it. So that was It's the most space age, radical looking stuff that you'd have ever seen. Your mind would have been blown seeing that picture, and the logo, even a logo like that was pushing the boat out. So that's your first batch, 1981, thin at Skyway ad on the back, but still pretty good. This is all you had. You want to know about BMX, you had to go to the newsagent and you had to score one of these if you were lucky. Most, like I say, I didn't even see these. This was before my time. So I'm guessing they were probably really hard to get unless you was at a race or you was already involved in BMX quite deeply. But that was where this whole magazine culture came from in the UK. In the US, they already had the magazines, but over here, we was slower to catch up because we didn't have BMX as early. And yeah, that went BMX Official turned into probably the most influential BMX mag that we've ever had over here, which was BMX Action Bike / RAD. But there's your first batch, 1981. One of them dwindled off after 4 months. One turned into BMX Bi-Weekly. The other one turned into BMX Action Bike. So let's check them two out. So April, May 1982, we get BMX Action Bike issue 1. Look at that. We kind of established something a bit more there, haven't we? Skyway ad on the back. Them pedals are hideous. And off we go. This is much more of a thing than those other those newspaper type things. We've got mountain bikes featured though in issue 1 already. That's ridiculous, huh? But yeah, this is all a learning curve. That nobody knew how long this was going to last, whether it was going to last, where it was going to go. No one knew anything. But Alan's advert, pretty cool, still going. Most of it is racing and jumping, weird stunts like jumping through fire. But the mag is quite thick. It's 52 pages. There's adverts. You can see like there's an established industry type of deal going on here. There's pictures from the US. There's a bike brand that's still irrelevant now that people are trying to make out is not. There's Bob. Early pics, that would have been completely cutting edge, out of this world, mind-blowing BMX riding in 1982. And it was. Yeah, there's ads. There's a lot of ads. Well, there's the correct amount of ads, realistically, for the amount of pages. And then they brought out this. Oh no, it's not. Sorry, it's the wrong page I was thinking of. So yeah, that was issue 1 of BMX Action Bike, which came from BMX Official. Issue 2 had that on the cover. And the early ones were, like I say, they were just mostly racing and jumping. It was rare to see any people getting on the quarter pipe or in a skate park or anything like that. It was all very straightforward stuff. I'm just flicking through here to see if we can see what we can see. And then we've got issue number 3, so it hasn't taken long. And we've got, look at that, Ruffle wearing the Port Harrow. And this sticker came with a free sticker, license to fly. was everywhere. And this is before my time, and that sticker was still about when I started riding. Skyway ad on the back. But look at that. That's what people are riding now. August, September. So it was bi-monthly as well. Adverts for shops. Little features and tests. A poster of people doing a skid. Bike 82 at Earl's Court. Superbike ad. Superbike was one of the core shops back in the 80s, one of the early ones. It says there they've got a shop in Brighton as well. I didn't know that they had 2 shops. I know that couldn't have lasted that long. But yeah, that's issue 3. And it just carried on really in that vein. It was very progressive, this mag. What number's this? This is issue, can't even see it, 8 maybe. Yeah, number 8. And this is much thicker. This is 88 pages. And this is the kind of thing that you wanted to see when you was an 80s BMX fan in the early days. This is still too early for me. I didn't. NEC coverage. That was a big deal at the time. Ruffle at the NEC. The NEC event was the legendary NEC event with Bob Haro that was featured on TV. And that really helped blow up kids getting into BMX and people wanting to do it after they saw Bob riding the demo that he did. There's issue 5, Ruffle Pickett's Lock, which was the second freestyle event in the UK. Harrow was the first one. There's actually a bit of Harrow. That's Chris Young. So Chris Young giving it some. He was one of the top guys back then. Marco Lara, uncaptioned. Tim March looking on there. And Bob Haro looking on, and Chris Young. Yeah, this is all this is establishing a bit of framework now as to what BMX mags turned into. So for the most part, they were actually pictures like this. It was the freestyle stuff was much smaller. It was nowhere near as covered as the racing. I guess the racing is where the advertisers came in. But yeah, this is, let me show you some of these covers. This is your kind of typical cover for that's a good one actually. This is more like what I remember them being most of the time in the early days. But like I say, these are still before me. That's a good one though. Like I say, when you were a kid, that was it. That was like, I need to be doing that, and I need to own that bike and that gear, and I need to get out there and rip. You even got an Iron Maiden Eddie on his race plate there. And then you'd get something like this. But inside, you would see a little snippet of what you really wanted to be doing, and you'd have a quarter pipe feature. Look at that, backyard pipes, and that's my friend up here. That's the Witch, 1983. You got in your magazine, and that is what you wanted to be doing. And also, what they provided in Action Bike was plans of how to build your own quarter pipe, and that really did set people into motion. So yeah, this was a really good progressive magazine, and the best one. I think this is, I think, is the best magazine we've ever had. But anyway, we'll get into that later as the years go by. Also, brought out a magazine. Well, actually, let me just give you this, because this was the first issue that I ever bought myself. Craig Campbell, Dark Side of the Bowl. I remember seeing this and being completely blown away. I didn't know what was happening here. I think I may have been to Rom, or I was planning on going to Rom. I couldn't do anything. But this photo feature was ridiculous. This is Craig's first photo feature, I think. Look at that one-hander there. And that was it. And this was, for years, I couldn't figure that out. How can he be so upside down looking? This feature was so good. And like I say, that was the first one I bought. Rest of the mag, mostly racing and bike tests. So mostly stuff like that. Bit boring for me. I wasn't really interested in that. This is what I wanted. This here, look at that. Wow. At Rom as well. So what more can you say? That's it. That's where your standards are. And then BMX Bi-Weekly. BMX Weekly turned into BMX Bi-Weekly. I've got a few examples here for you, and they wasn't that appealing to me. So BMX Action Bike was based in London, and BMX Bi-Weekly was based up north. And that's Mike Pardon on there. It was like covers like that for years and years, and lots of racing, lots of pages of nothing as well. I remember being in here, and there's Andy Preston. Andy Preston and Mike Pardon were like the trick team guys, the BMX Weekly trick team, and they were all over this mag. But if they weren't in it, it was just pages and pages. It'd be stuff like this, which is a cool photo actually, but it's not really set. And look, race clubs and just pages like that. So a quick look at another race one. Trevor Robinson. Now look at old Tim there, posing on the side of the motor. Look. Tim March Talks, they got that right. Yeah, it was always this is a perfect spread for what I think of when thinking of BMX Weekly. Andy Preston occasionally gets something good like that. But yeah, this magazine didn't really speak to me much, to be fair. There's another cover. That's terrible, that one. Don't know who that is. But you would literally get pages like that. bad bike, and a page full of writing. Kind of, I can see here why I wasn't really into this mag back then much. That's all stuff that was not very appealing to me. But there is one here that at least, there's two here, but that's a bit later on. So then there's this one, which is Bob Haro at the NEC, which was the event I was talking about earlier. But yeah, look at just bland, you know. But this is coming out every 2 weeks, so you've got to expect that, really. Little early freestyle. But yeah, not much else to it. NEC, big groundbreaking event. That was it. That was one of the things that really blew up. And then Tony McKenzie, King of the Skate Parks. So this is 84, so this is a bit later. And you got Neil Ruffle, King of the Skate Parks contest. Just flicking through, see what other Ralph Tribe poster. Ralph Tribe was one of my favourites at ROM. He was a ripper, but he was under the radar. And I don't even know where the King of the Skate Park footage is, because I can't find it. Anyway, that mag, yeah, not all that really. Bit bland, but it did come out every 2 weeks. So that would be the one that you saw mostly, because it came out every 2 weeks. That seemed like it was always on the shelf, or an issue of it was always on the shelf. But like I say, it didn't really hold much appeal to your average kid who wanted to do some tricks. So yeah, I wanted to touch on the year of 1984 as well, really, as we just sort of stumbled across that year in the last mag that I showed, pretty much. In 84 was the big 83 and 84 were like the exploding years for BMX, and it shows when you look at the mags, because we got two, as well as these, that was well en route by that point, and established mags. What's that one? That one looks like a bit more an interesting cover. Mike Pardon. We also got two random magazines. So we had BMX Action Bike, we had BMX Weekly. There was a new one going to be launched, but we got these two random publications. Well, they weren't random, they were just mags, but like they just kind of sprung up into the boom days, which was BMX Racer and Freestyle. If you check out the covers, that kind of tells you they're a little. You can see that they're not quite on the cutting edge of what's going on, even though that mag was all right. And then you had this one, which was BMX Biker, which was the worst one of the batch for sure. Not that it was. They just didn't know what they was looking at. It was really weird. If you look through these mags now, the captions are all wrong. They don't know anyone's names. They don't. It's really like I don't really know how they ended up making a BMX mag. I suppose they just thought it was going to make them some money. But there's not hardly any advertisers in there. The content, the photos, some of the photos are okay. The content is, the people just didn't have a clue what they were talking about, which is really I find quite baffling. So yeah, BMX Biker was probably, which was every month, and I think it only lasted a year or 2 years possibly. I'll find out and put it in the bottom in the caption. But it was full colour. It looked all right, but yeah, when you tried to read it, it just didn't have a clue what it was on about. Yeah, don't know the story there really, but this one was a bit better for sure, and it got better as it went on. But this one lasted until 1986, so this only ran for 2 years as well. But BMX Racer and Freestyle, they had some okay photos in there, and the editorial was pretty cool as well. It was by a guy called Dave Spurden, who wrote some BMX annuals as well in the early days. But you can see like they're a little bit behind the times of the more established mags. Like Action Bike had a way better stuff going on. So if you look at a couple of Action Bike covers from the same year, you can kind of probably get the idea. Look, guy, I mean, I picked these randomly pretty much. So racetrack cover, pretty boring looking, to be honest. BMX Weekly with an air, but that's mostly what you got that year, 1984. And then you got Biker, which had Simon Kefford there on the cover. Look at him going. That was very much your average biker cover as well. And then you had Action Bike, which was the pick of the crop. And they was doing stuff like this. This is the same time period. I mean, look at that. That's a way better cover. Way more exciting in layout, photography, everything they've got going on there. And look at that. And then you start getting American covers, footage of coverage of the US, which was none of the other mags were doing. I suppose that's what you get when you're a little bit more established. So yeah, 84 was the blow up year. And then also in 84, BMX Bi-Weekly brought out their own freestyle mag. I guess they saw what was happening in America with freestyling, and they decided to have a go themselves. Freestyle was blowing up at this point as well. So BMX, most of the kids wanted to do tricks, and it had some good photos and stuff. And for a couple of issues, I really enjoyed this and thought it was really exciting, even though it was really thin. It was probably, I think this is 32 pages for a magazine. But there wasn't, yeah. There's a good old flatty there for the old days. But it's still, looking at it now, it's still a bit bland. Stuff like that. And the second issue, this only held my interest for about probably not even a year. The second issue was good because it had Rom on it, which was a place that I used to go in those days. So that was exciting, and it had a good bit of coverage of Andy Preston and Mike Pardon at Rom, who were the BMX Bi-Weekly trick team. They were suddenly the staple of freestyle BMX because it was the same people, the Higginsons behind it, and there's a little bit of a later. So yeah, I mean, you can see much more exciting as well. The cover there, it's got better already. That's only issue 4, but the Andy Preston cover's pretty cool though. Look at that for issue 1. 50p, mate. Look at that. 50p, 32 pages. Come out every month. Went on to. It dwindled in there for many years. Oh, and another ROM cover. Jess, that's at King of the Skate Parks, which is an event they sponsored. That's issue 8 or 6. I can't see it properly. But yeah, 84, your blow up year. So it was all going 84, but this was it. This stuff. We had the Kellogg's TV show in 84, which Action Bike covered. And we had stuff like Eddie Fiola coverage, posters of like real. Look at that, that's a great picture, that one. Like, this is really progressive stuff. Like, we, as kids, we was all over this. This is just building Fiola to the Kellogg's, I think, yeah, April, so Kellogg's hadn't been on yet. But that, yeah, you can see big progression there from those other mags that were trying to sort of get in there. That's the other one. And then this as well was one of my favourites, for sure. First, I think this was probably the first time I actually like took in any pipeline, so to speak. I might have seen it in a couple of American mags, but not really knowing what it was. And these guys run a feature on the locals, or a couple of the locals, which was Mike Dominguez and Rich Segura. These were like completely. That was me. I was off on. I needed to just dedicate all my energy to BMX at this point, which was really difficult because we had nowhere to ride. We just rode around the streets and tried to do basic tricks. But they had like the look into the pipeline, and these guys airing was a real. That opened up a whole new world for everyone who was riding. Also, local kids who went on to be sponsored guys. So Tony McKenzie down there in the corner. We got Jason Lunn, and that was, I believe, Jason Lunn's quarter pipe in his front yard, and Ralph Tribe at the bottom there, who I mentioned earlier. And that was the Ashted crew. And that was really good, like, to see that, like, oh, you can just build a quarter pipe in your front yard and you can have your mates round and get them to blast theirs. The world of grey, boring things was rapidly evaporating at this point. And then they had this as well, which is really cool, which is one of the first freestyle contests over here as well, which is ROM Skate Park. Definitely the first contest at a skate park. There's Dave Curry doing the kick turn, Craig Campbell doing the kick turn, Glyn Lewis up the top there doing the front hops, and Billy Stupple down there airing out the clover. This was another, like, opened up a new door as well. It was all happening here. You can't really, it's hard to explain how exciting this was when this was all going on. But it was all new, and life at this point in time, up until then, was just, you know, we hadn't even seen a coloured tyre, let alone like all the other stuff going on. Everything in the UK was black and white, it seemed, back then. It was dreary, and it was slow, and it was very bland. And then all this stuff arrived. And this is when they took Mike Dominguez and Eddie Fiola to Livingston Skate Park, and no one had seen Livingston Skate Park before. And after seeing the pipeline stuff and ROM, and it was yet another destination or place that you wished you could go. Especially the praise. They gave Livingston Skate Park a lot of praise here. Obviously, Livingston in Scotland had a really good local scene as well, and probably still does. Talk about that with Dave Frame in his Union Tapes podcast. But yeah, that was a big eye opener and really iconic. That double page spread was it. That was where it was at. So yeah, 84, blow up year. Now we've got BMX Weekly, Freestyle BMX, BMX Racer and Freestyle, BMX Biker, and BMX Action Bike. So you've got 5 mags in the UK, all covering BMX, which is pretty astounding when you think about it. Like, and one of the mags was bi-weekly, all the others come out monthly. So you had a good amount of stuff to read back in those days, even though BMX Biker wasn't exactly a good read, but it did have some good photos. So yeah, then we end up in 85, which starts weeding people out. Let's have a quick flick through this. So yeah, this is the first issue of 85, I think. This is whole shot pics. Look, there's a picture of Craig Campbell and a pictures of him riding and receiving he won the first whole shot. Simon Kefford on the other page. Ruffle on the cover. Geoff Shooter gets mentioned there on the cover. A couple of, see, this is all right. They've moved forward a bit with what they're doing. They've jazzed it up a bit, so to speak. But yeah, they still don't know who anyone is, and they still really don't know when to take the photo. But yeah, and then there's another one from 80. Look, freestyle feature. So the photos all look really old as well. BMX Biker Special Freestyle. So yeah, that was their last year. So they didn't see beyond 85. So adios, BMX Biker. Still hanging in there is Racer and Freestyle, and you can see the colours are changing now as well that people are using on the mags. So Racer and Freestyle that's from 86. Look, I've only got, so things are changing. Look, the colours are different, the covers are different, the content is different. This is another one with whole shot 85, and there's, I believe, the only pic of Rich Segure from that whole shot. It was almost like he wasn't even there, but he was there for sure. He just didn't get into any of the other mags. And yeah, there's a lot. This is much better. This starts to get its own character now as well. Look at that, much better. But there's still not many adverts. There's even some pipeline. King of the Skate Parks, which I'm guessing will be Peter Hawkins photos. That's from when Craig and Neil rode King of the Skate Parks, I think. Well, Neil didn't, Craig did. Yeah. Classic 80s sort of looking page there. Wilkerson on the cover. 70 pence. Let's see how many pages that was. Probably won't even tell you. No, it doesn't even say. That's probably about 34 pages maybe. So yeah, they was still in it, and they was improving. These guys were still in it. And you can see again that things are changing. So that's 85. Craig Campbell at Southsea on the cover. Inside, got some skateboarding, which is, they're covering skating early. Skateboarding was just coming up at this point, and these guys are, they might even be covering it before Action Bike covered it. Little feature there. Southsea, some locals, but still, this is still a bit boring, but getting way better. There's another picture of Craig. Pro light test. So yeah, these guys are still there, still progressing as well, which is better than stagnating. Another whole shot cover from when Wilkerson was there. I'll put some of the pics up from inside these mags so you can see what sort of stuff they're printing. But yeah, it's not, it's all right, but it's not great. Really thin. 32 pages. Yeah, this is, and then there's one of the monumental contests. Darren Robinson on the cover at Mons 1. Good Neil Ruffle and Hugo pictures. Really good. But yeah, they covered Mons, which was like one of the big turning points of BMX, full stop. And there's a picture of Jess in this one that they used for the UK BFA logo, and there's also a picture of Jess at Southsea there, and that's Carl Westfield at Southsea on the other side. But yeah, so that's better as well, isn't it? Look, that's way more exciting than the first few issues that come out. So they're moving along, but as usual, BMX Action Bike have attitude and vibe going on. Look at that, Dave Curry. That's Dave Curry Scorpion Test. Maybe Dave Curry's first cover, and that is Chingford, the port Chingford where we used to ride Flatland, Chase Lane Park. Let's have a quick flick through. Oh, we've got a whole shot covered again. Stupple, Terry Jenkins, Simon Kefford, Craig Strong and Trevor Cow. A lot of racing. Scorpion Test. Yeah, but look, and this guy went on to work at the mag and be a big influence on that mag, and also everything about that mag, really. And then Wilkerson from the Kellogg's. Wilkerson hit the shore, so all the UK scene was aware of him by that point, even though he'd been on Freestyling, the US mag cover, and featured in there a little bit. We still hadn't seen him ride because we'd only seen photos, but coverage of Kellogg's too. This was good. Look at that. There's a lot of expression to that, and that's good. You want to buy into that. Look, it's pure blue sky in the UK. Wilkerson, pink grips, stretching it out, looking good. It still is as well. And then you had a Mons feature with Andy Shahara on the cover. Andy Shahara was from Hawaii and moved to the UK for a little while. And there was a feature on Mons half pipe, which was another eye opener, because at that point people didn't really ride half pipes. Everyone was just blasting out quarter pipes. So this new thing, look at that. That's a good cover as well. Shades. Cool t-shirt, good colours on the cover, good picture, riding a new bit of terrain. It said schools out there, but someone's ripped the but I'll put that cover up anyway. Great issue, fully vibing. And then we had this one, which was the last issue of 85, skateboarding featured. Nick Phillip on the cover at his quarter pipe in Muswell Hill. And again, look at the colours and the photography, and everything is going the right way here, progressing along and gaining character and establishing a vibe of what what appealed to most kids of that age. And then there's a little couple of pictures from Nick Phillips' session. Jess, Eric Steele, and I think there's a really nice picture of Darren Robinson, if I remember. That's on the next page. Yeah, this looks styling. 1985, and he's styling even with them race pants on. But yeah, real good, amazing. That I remember seeing that, and that was again like, this is pink shoes, pink wheel discs, some stickers that we didn't know what they were. They was called a Narcic adjustment. Back then we didn't know what that was, and that was Nick Phillips' company. And Nick also went on to work at that mag and be a major player in what came later. So that's 1985. BMX biker is gone. Yeah, so if we move on to 86, we've lost BMX biker. That didn't see 1986. We've still got all the others. BMX Weekly, I'd given up by 1985. I'd given up on that mag, so I don't even. It was just uninteresting to me. Freestyle BMX is still a thing. There you go, Terry Jenkins on the cover, but it's definitely suffering with some advertising issues, I would say. Some of the papers, like newspaper, some of the photos are old. Look at this. That's 1986, and they're showing a picture. I'm sure that's Neil Ruffle at his house in Walthamstow, and that's from 84 when he was on, or 85 when he was on Skyway. Sorry. Pictures of hole shot. There's a lot of pictures of skating, which happened with all the mags. Terry Jenkins interview. It's not as bad as what I remember it, to be honest, but it's a bit of a mishmash. Weird that they've got two different types of paper. In the middle they've got gloss, and on the edges it's at the end rather, and and the beginning it's like a weird newspapery sort of print you could rub off on your fingers. But yeah, so they're still going in 1986, but they're dwindling a little bit. Lost. See, that looks old. Considering that's 1986, that looks like an old cover, older than that. BMX Racer and Freestyle, that's picked up a bit. I wanted to show you that one. That was a good. That's the only real feature I remember from being a youngster. This is from 85. This is the end of 85, December 80. Oh no, sorry, May 85. I don't know when these photos must have been taken in the winter because it looks super wintry. Jess and Nick Phillip, or Nicky Radicalize as they called him, on Jess's quarter pipe in Highgate. But yeah, that's the only feature I can remember, other than there's a Glyn Lewis one at Gillingham Skate Park from that magazine, from when I was a youngster. I remember them now from going through them again. There's another back to the 1986, back to racing on that cover, which is a pretty weird thing to do, I think. The cover looks, like I say, this cover looks old as well. That looks like a cover from 84. And then we step it up a bit. That's more like it. Jason Lunn doing a Superman. Look at that, that's ahead of its time. That's what Superman used to be like. July 1986, pink colours, bright colours, a lot of Jason Lunn inside, all black and white inside, not any colour by the looks of it. Oh, a little bit of colour at the front. But yeah, starting to weed them out. So it's Craig Campbell on the cover there. Yeah, loads of black and white. Another Peppy Winder on the cover, 70p. And this was coming out every month, like we said. This might even have a, 60 pages. So yeah, the page count was pretty getting better in this Racer and Freestyle. But then they would do weird things like this. Why would you do that? And then we got Jason Lunn when I'm super 80s cover, that one. Power mower. This definitely had a little bit of, this had vibe to it, for sure. It just needed a little bit more. Tony McKenzie there, look, laying one down. So yeah, that was, but that was the year that ended, 1986. That didn't see any further. So now we're down to 4 magazines, I think. Let me just check that and make sure I'm correct. So yeah, 86 for Action Bike was a monumental year. These guys really pushed the vibe of what was happening. Look at that, that's a great cover. So that's Dave Curry again. Look at that, that's great. The layout's cool, it's exciting, the colours are good. Dave Curry looks cool as in his surf shorts and his Action Zone t-shirt it's just great. Odd wheels, weird looking bike, loads of different colours on the bike. Started getting a bit, there's much more going on now. This is becoming way more free. They're starting to feature skateboarding quite regularly by now. This is January 86. Things like that are going on, which you can see that's where BMX was heading. It was getting influenced by the older skateboarders who were much more culturally deep than what BMX still looked, if you let it, which many did, still looked a bit kiddie. But right there, it doesn't look kiddie. It looks like something's good. It looks like people are into some weirdness, into some cool music. And Dave Curry was probably working for the mag by that point. Another monumental cover from 86 was this one, which was Ian Osborne from Mons 2, which was the jam of much contention, when the BFA, and that ended up on everyone's walls pretty much. Look at Dean, he's not happy. Look. Dean Rush there. And when the BFA and the guys who attended Mons Jam collided about Mons Jam, really. So that was Mons 2, and there was also good things like this, like Craig and Diz Hicks there. Look, US versus UK. Good cover though. That look, that screams at you. That one. Just a basic trick, but look, no helmet, shorts, spoke wheels, no silly colours on the bike. Good expression on the face. That just looks like all. That's what you want to be doing. You want to be there on that deck watching this guy and then doing what he's doing. Ian Osborne, that is. And then this one, which again, we're going along the same, we're continuing on the same path here. Paul Wright, founder of Chinkford Ramp, skateboard ripper, all-round good bloke. And Nick Phillip, foot planting out of his ripped t-shirt. And let's have a look what we... Oh, and this is the other thing that the BFA really took offence to, which was there's a bit of swearing written on that pole there of Dave when Dave Curry's doing that foot plant. That's in Edmonton. That was in Edmonton, that banked offence. And this Street Style article is really good. It still stands up today, really. But that also was a big deal, and people were upset. And then Chingford Jam was coming up. That was the last jam, half-pipe jam of 86. Well, there was only two, but Mons and Chingford. There's Nick, Tony McKenzie and Damon Nichols. And there's a little bit of promotion on that. Amazing. What a cover. That's great. That's risk. And that's being brave enough to do that risk and push it out. And then we got this, which was the Jason Lunn on the cover, Chingford Jam, sort of round off the year of 86, really, this issue. Racing back on the cover there, like the Worlds, which was also there was also some controversy there. We got some skating at Farnborough, Adrian Domain, I think that is. So this is when skateboarding starts becoming staple in in BMX action bike, sorry. Yeah, Adrian Domain interview. Bit of race coverage. Chingford Jam. And you could tell now BMX is dwindling. Things are receding. Dean Rush crashed before the jam started. Yeah, things are fully on their way down at this point. And this is another great piece. So that's BMX Action Bike and the BFA butting heads via Royal Mail. And this is also a game-changing picture. So that's Craig Campbell over Damon Nichols taking a pee, Nick Phillip with a mask, Tony McKenzie and Eddie Roman. That was a game changer as well. So yeah, things are really changing now. And they're heading underground and they're heading more core. And on the back of the mag, look, this is what they are trying to sell you. They're lost. Uniforms are gone, but the old casual look of the 80s on the BMX, pink bike with white skyways. However, reality, spoke wheels, getting gnarly. So yeah, the industry had totally lost track of what BMX was actually doing at that point. And that was Action Bike in 86, which, as I say, that was the people that were really spearheading the cultural, what people were holding and what people who were still riding were still holding on to. And it got stronger with those few people, I think, because they helped it, that they were pushing a lot of good things. So now we get to 87, and there's actually a piece that I missed. BMX Bi-Weekly and Freestyle BMX merged in 1985, which I didn't even know until I just had to look into that. So they're down to one mag. So right now we've gone from 5 mags to 2 mags in the UK. And this one is, I mean, I'll be honest, it's pretty lost. It's not really got anything in it. It's like a newspaper inside. And it's featuring racing now as well. And it was just a lot of stuff like this. It was a lot of promo stuff for clubs and events, like page after page of just text and black and white blocks. Really thin, really flimsy. Mail order ads, skateboarding, stuff for the ESA. Stuff like that. Yeah, this is completely dwindled by this point. We've got mountain bike feature in the middle. We've got a picture from 85 or something, 86. Yeah, not much happening there. Yeah, that's kind of that has completely lost interest and lost its way. I think that's so it's Carlo at the bottom, and I think Bod Boyle doing the invert on the skateboard. So yeah, 87. There wasn't much going on with freestyle BMX. However, seeing as we're only down to 2 mags by this point, it was all going on with this one. Look at that. So this is, again, that's a good cover, isn't it? Other than the snowboard. Again, this has pushed it into yet another level. Whole shot with McCoy, which was a big contest in London that they used to do. That was a good event. McCoy came and he blew everyone away. There's American pics in here of Todd Anderson, Mike Dominguez. There's some good stuff in here. I'll put it on screen. And there's also this feature about wall rides, which, look at that. Nick Phillip on that's a shiny wall he's doing that on. It's like one of those tile walls. And that was, so see the barbed wire on the bike. We've gone a bit punk rock here. And we're branching out. Look at them tiled walls. And that was, again, they're taking, in this mag, they're starting to push bike riding away from conventional areas like sports halls, quarter pipes and flatland and stuff. Look at the back. They've even got a cool ad on the back there, look. So yeah, 87, it's all, everything's on the change. And these guys are doing it. But yeah, the covers, suddenly no one's wearing a helmet. They're getting all kinds of creativity and montage on there and full on aggro. See, this is now this is something you can actually attach yourself to. Instead of being embarrassed that you're riding around with pink Skyways, it starts meaning something. And this creeps on to, so see that cover there? That's a cool cover as well. Nick Phillip responsible. Whatever. Scooters though, look. Nah, we ain't doing that, are we? We weren't doing it then and we're not doing it now. RAD, Read and Destroy, starts creeping onto the cover. So it's BMX action bike, question mark, Read and Destroy. What is going on here then? Inside they tell you what's going on there. Features are good. There's an equal amount of skateboarding to BMX. And there's even Zodiac Mind Warp advert. So yeah, you can tell that the BMX ads are almost gone in those mags now. There's mail order ads, but there's no bike companies. There's skate companies and not much BMX companies whatsoever, if any. And they was covering scenes like this, which was another mega influential scene back in those days. Was this one Trumpton? We can't say that because we get flagged if we say that word, so I might even have to take that word out. That's the world we're living in. So what I mean is, Hudson Brothers, Jason Ellis, Dave Slade. Sean Allison, all from that scene. And that issue is, before I put it away, and as you can see, BMX action bike, RAD, is starting to change into read and destroy. And this issue brought us this feature as well, which was some of the best attitude-ridden pages, I think, in the history of BMX. Those tricks were all completely cutting edge at that point. Odd wheels, no helmet, jeans, pair of Converse. Look at the facial. He means it. Andy Brown feature. Unreal. That's for sure one of my favourite features in the history of BMX. And then in '87, Dave Slade graces the cover, and that's the last BMX cover you're going to get. Because from there on, BMX action bike logo got smaller and smaller until it disappeared. And BMX only ever got a small picture at the bottom corner on the cover from then on. And even in this one, skateboarding is starting to outweigh the BMX. There's a BMX racing feature in here, and there's a picture of before he started riding again. This is when he was on his way up. There's the old Fids there, look. R.I.P. mate. That's his first picture, Gillingham Skate Park. But yeah, there's your last real BMX cover of BMX action bike stroke RAD. In 1988, it was RAD. And you got BMX features, but you only ever got like a couple of pages or a picture here and there. And then up until about 91, and then it was gone. In 90 to 91, you virtually saw no BMX in there. But, you know, they were the game-changing mag. Enough BMX had completely died by that point. It was over. Like there's no advertisers. You're down to two mags. One mag was, well, they're both skate and BMX. And it was finished. There was so few people riding at that point. I mean, it got worse, but at that point, 87, it had really fallen in on itself, and it had completely changed, and people didn't wear the same clothing. Everything had changed in society, but in BMX it had really flipped 180, and it was like very punk and extravagant looking. It was loud, and it was some of that basically, because people were getting angry at being called a BMX bandit or getting sung BMX boys have a lot of fun down the street as you rode, and things got tighter. It was good. And then you had the skateboard influence, which made it feel like this could turn into something good, because skateboarding was very much like that when that went through its big boom and out the other side. And skating was totally core, and they had completely their own communities. So we could see that if the few people riding BMX knew that's what they wanted out of it. And so on to 1988. So what also happened in 87 was the Higginsons sold Freestyle BMX to Mark Noble and Peter Noble. And here we have life breathed into this magazine. So it started coming back round again. Chingford, Lee Reynolds, Larry Ball. So things have started to get better. Look, you can see that people are actually doing things here, being creative, getting out there and doing what needs to be done. Craig Campbell and Phil Dolan on that spread. Good picture of Scott Carroll at a BFA contest. Stephen Laidlaw. Yeah, this is way better. So it's come back to life. They've started breathing some life into this for sure. South Bank with Dave Slade and Sid. We're not on a scooter, are we? Yeah, we're on a scooter, sorry. But yeah, it's come back round. That's actually from 87, but these ones are from, this is from a later, this is 88, as you can see. There's a Chris Potts on the cover, and there was things like this being shot and captured, which I'm sure everyone has seen. Carlo, 88 Worlds, Manchester, blasting the mind-blowing air out of that quarter. So it got better again once the contributors took over the mag. Things started returning, and this is at a point when BMX is hurting. Oh, there's a picture of Pova. Look at that Pova on the racetrack there. Look, no foot can. Look at the people in the background. I think that's maybe a possible event. That's a king of dirt. Look at the spectators. That'll give you an idea of how small it's got. There's no one. So yeah, freestyle BMX starts coming back into the fold, even though there is no fold. BMX Action Bike Stroke RAD is now RAD, and there's your classic cover from then. Only that wasn't often on there. So if we flick through this, we've got we've got skating, skateboard giveaways, we've got Craig Grasso, we've got another one of the dwindling pieces from that year. That was a good piece actually. That had a lot of new tricks in it. Scott Carroll, Lee Reynolds, no footed 540. This was a good feature. Feature on half pipes. There's a picture of Craig Campbell again. So this one has still got an okay amount of BMX in it, but it's probably only a quarter. There's roller skates in here. Look at him, he's styling. So yeah, 88, and we are sinking fast. 2 mags, both all right. One really good, one pretty good, but we're down to 2. So 88, things are pretty bad for BMX and BMX mags. We've got no RAD's almost gone. There's a few token features every now and again, but it's predominantly a skate mag. Freestyle is still going, but freestyle in 89, which was one of the quietest years I think, turned into Invert magazine, which actually none of these. So Invert magazine comes out in 89, makes not a big splash, but it seemed to have more substance to it. It featured skating as well as BMX. It was done by Mark and Chris Noble, and it was good. There was a good cut and paste kind of feel to it. It was artsy. It definitely had a vibe, more so than freestyle BMX, even when they were doing it. I'll put some reference up for you because I've picked the wrong years. It was cut and paste looking, taken from what I would assume freestyling and Homeboy magazine, which Homeboy had already gone by this point. So we've got a new mag, and it's a lot of feature of BMX. So I thought I'd have to show you one of the classics. Well, not the classics, but the one of their magazines from that year. Cool cover. Like I was saying, very cut and paste, photocopied kind of stuff that I like, really. Good logo. I like that logo. Good content, music stuff. Picture of Juice there at ROM. Writing by Andy Brown. I think that photo might be Andy Brown's as well. A rip on the Puss Zone, the Dan Zone. Not quite Pusshead, was it that? Some racing, some scooter advert. Broadmarsh Banks. Little piece on a local from Broadmarsh Banks. This was good. Broadmarsh Banks was a classic spot, which actually features in the next mag that I'm bringing out. Look at that. That's one of my favourite photos, I think. That can on the big quarter in Liverpool. What was it called? Rathbone. That's it. Amazing, that pic. Pictures of Zach, pictures of Jams. This is really, yeah, all this sort of stuff. Really good. Sort of stuff I like seeing. A lot of skateboarding at the front. But yeah, there's a good, this is all good. Look, it's good pages. Excellent. Don't get me wrong. We used to hammer this mag when it came out. I don't know why. I think we thought we knew best, really, even though we hadn't done anything. But that's what you get when you're a kid. You think you know everything, and you don't. But yeah, invert. That carried on for a little while. They did the do, travelled around, took the photos, got contributors, got things going. That was a good one. California cover. That would have been one of our gripes, though. Too much America. Matt Hoffman cover in 1990 from when he came over to do the King of Vert, UK King of Vert show. Fuzzy cover. That's a nice cover as well. I don't know about that race gear. That was a bit, for then, that was even frowned upon heavily by most people. But he was coming from the race scene, I guess. Backyard Jam. Yeah, this is a good mag. That run for until 92 when it turned into UK Ride. But something else happened in between that. Let me just clue you up on that. Yeah, so whilst Invert was going strong, a new mag had come out called BMX Now. This is 1991. They brought... That must have been the quietest period in BMX from 89 to 91, 92 was the most desolate time in BMX that I've ever known. So it's a bold step. And this is a thick magazine. This was done by James Hudson, the ex-pro from Retford. And it was good. The layout was a bit bland. Look at that picture of Zach there. The layout left a lot to be desired. But he's running on a budget and he's learning as he goes. But the riding was all progressive kind of stuff. It was as a time when BMX, it was one of the best periods, really. Interview with Carlo, which later on had some heat over things that were said. I can't even remember what. Manchester scene report by the looks of it. But the cover definitely could have been better. And the logo is a bit... this is what you do when you're young. The fact that he's probably 22 or 21 years old and he's made this mag. Quite thick. "64 pages, issue 1. pretty good. Cover was not great. This cover was the best one, I think. Alex Leach. A lot of image there. It's good. Trick, look, bike. Pretty cool, that one. On the back, pretty contrasting. Old Amtrak. I think that was in relation to him speeding like a train. And in this one, you've even got a picture of Sean Scarf, which is a rare sight. Ian Morris on the other page. Sean Scarf, Leon C contest. Yeah, good mag. Good mag, but bit boring on the layout. But as I say, you're learning. Only lasted 5 issues and it was gone. Evaporated. No advertisers. Too hard. But it sort of morphed into Dig almost. This is the starting of it. But yeah, BMX Now, come and gone. 91. And then it was gone within 2 years. So, quarterly. Another one. In and out. After that, in 90, well, not after that, but during that, in 1992, October, November, Invert changes into Ride UK. That's the first issue. Chad Harrington on the cover. That was a happening. Chad Harrington was a happening bike rider right at that year. This is good. This is dirtier than what Ride became later. Ride went on for decades after this, but this is really the first few years was really good. It was more grimy and more. It had more texture to it. Obviously, we had a big issue with this when it came out for no reason, but I don't know. As I say, that's being young and angry. But yeah, Ride. That was the first issue, and it was by Mark and Chris Noble. Had many contributors over the years. One of the big contributors, Grot Bags and Lard, Steve Bancroft. I'm probably missing a couple from certain eras, but there's so many magazines to cover. This went on to become a huge deal, and it led into them doing a publishing company called 4130, which was a big small publishing company, if you know what I mean. And they did a lot of stuff, supported a lot of people, did a lot of mags, did a lot of creative stuff, and generally were good for the scene. I think eventually it got sold to a big corporate. I don't even know what you'd call them. I don't know what the term is. I can't remember, but some sort of company in London called Factory Media, and it shit the bed pretty hard once they got hold of it. I bet Mark, if Mark had carried on doing that magazine, I'm sure would still be going. But they lost tons of money, blew it all, bought every mag, including Dig. But Dig at this point has just come out. So from BMX Now, you've got 1993 Dig issue 1, which was again a game changer. Really on point. Pretty dark and black and white for the first few issues, but that was fine. That was what we didn't have an issue with this. We needed to absorb BMX and the latest BMX and the current stuff going on, and this was it as far as we was concerned. This had a big fan base straight away. It had a lot of lesser known people doing real cutting edge stuff. Ian Morris on the cover there of issue 1. It had a music page. He was that was cool. That went for many issues as being a good mag that I really enjoyed. This one, the stuff like this, when no one really knew what straight edge was. Timmy Strzelecki on the back there on the S&M ad. Inside, quite arty and laid out quite chaotically, but clean. Really good. Let's get some more pages up here. MTV contest. Yeah, it had a lot of vibe to it. It had good contributors. It spoke. It had character. It wasn't afraid to say stuff. Big Bob Colt on the straight edge feature. Stoffer. See, this is all people that weren't, or not so much Robbie Morales, but Stoffer. He's just coming up at this point, so they're bringing people to the table that you've heard about, but haven't been covered excessively. But little feature on some Scottish jumps. Good mag. Still going, but it's very, very different to what it was then. And I think this may be definitely in the top 3 covers of any magazine. I think Brian Foster, Sheep Hills. I think Bart de Jong took the photo. I'm going off memory there, but I think that's what it was. And stuff like this. Chris Allman. Yeah, it's people that you didn't really see. They're starting to break through. Things are changing again, or they're just progressing. Things don't really they don't change and stop. They change and keep changing, and that's what's going on with everything. But these are all changes for the better. Duff's ad on the back. I think that's Paul Robertson from Scotland at Livy. Shiny, that back cover. But yeah, this mag was good for many, many years, but this also got bought by Factory as well when they bought it back. But I think it was 12 issues in 10 years, so the rate that they came out wasn't exactly how they wanted them to come out. But yeah, that started in 1993. It's still going. It's an annual mag now, and it's way, way thicker than it's got to be over 200 pages. But that's still going. Rider's gone after the Factory debacle. 70s tried to do it. It didn't really work out. That's gone now. So we're down to not many. We're down to Endless sometimes comes out. Dig comes out once a year. And the Union Zine comes out once a year as well. There's also Slack and Silent. And that's it. That's me missing out the Albion, which came in the middle. I can't get into all these ones that came out in the middle and didn't really have much impact, because there was also Grind magazine. They released one issue in 1995, which was like probably the worst mag you've come across, especially for that period of time when everything was so core and they released something so bad. And the Albion, which was a stellar magazine, but that came out later, and that was people who quit Ride started up the Albion. There's an issue there, which was an amazing mag. Really cool. Definitely deserves a shout out. Best photos, best pieces, really. Even though some of the pieces they tried to emphasise everyone was just street tough, but it was a bit of an exaggeration. But that's a minor gripe. Look at that. Not afraid to print things or say things. that not everyone would like, which also makes a mag good, I think. Pictures like that. The covers were always creative. And the riding inside was always, or for the most part, good looking BMX riding. Wasn't overcomplicated. Who's this young guy here? Look. Not overcomplicated, good photos, good writing, layouts pretty, not my sort of thing, but I like the way that they use so many full bleed photos on the page. This is more my sort of style. I always call that grown-ups magazines. Afraid to get dirty. Yeah, this is great. Shame, it's sorely missed, to be fair. And this only lasted a couple of years. Came and went. There was also Case, which was done by Mike Netley, which came out just before this. And there was one called BMX Rider, which came out in 2002. I think only lasted a couple of years, but that weren't very good either. And you've got to realise doing a magazine in a 2 or 3 month period is just a ridiculously hard task. I'm not surprised that so many of these mags weren't that great, because it's an epic mission, like to do one a year. So to do one every 3 months, or every month, or every 2 months, or whatever, or bi-weekly or weekly, as they did in 1981, it's just impossible. But anyway, there's your brief rundown of UK magazines and all that was involved in them. I would say support print, like them magazines that I've mentioned. Support their mags, especially if they're UK mags, because that's your scene and that's all you've got. So if you can delve in a bit deeper, it's always nice to have something you can hold and look at instead of going on your phone and just doing this, which we all do anyway. But anyway, issue 7, Bicycle Union Zine. Don't get upset. Thanks for listening. We've got a Patreon page, so if you could show us any support, we'd be most grateful. The link's below. A lot of work goes into these shows, so anything you could do would be much appreciated. Thank you.